And Wolf, just to give you a sense as to what's happening right now, you can hear there is a chorus of boos and other chants from this Trump crowd here in Tampa, Florida. They're saying things like CNN sucks, go home, and fake news. Wolf, obviously, all of those things are false. We're staying right here. We're going to do our job and report on this rally to all of our viewers here tonight. Wolf. And here are some of the steel slats that the president's been talking about right here. As you can see, yes, you can see through these slats to the other side of the U.S.-Mexico border. But as we're walking along here, we're not seeing any kind of imminent danger. There are no migrants trying to rush toward this fence.
So it's not an easy negotiation.
Mr. President, since you attacked CNN, can I ask you a question?
John Roberts, go ahead, John. No. John Roberts, go ahead. CNN's fake news. I don't take questions. I don't take questions from CNN. CNN is fake news. I don't take questions from CNN. John Roberts of Fox.
That you made in the tail end of the campaign in the midterms.
Here we go.
If you don't mind, Mr. President, that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr. President,
I consider it to be an invasion.
As you know, Mr. President, the caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling me that. I appreciate it.
Why did you characterize it as such?
Because I consider it an invasion. You and I have a difference of opinion.
But do you think that you demonized immigrants in this election
to
try to keep?
I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. You know, they have to come in, Jim, through a process. I want it to be a process, and I want people to come in, and we need the people. Wait. You know why we need the people, don't you? Because we have hundreds of companies moving in. We need the people.
But your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
Well, that's true.
But
they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. Right. These were people. This was an actual, it happened a few days ago. And
they're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr.
President, that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian
investigation
because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation? This disconnect that we seem to have in this country, where you are presenting information about what's happening at the border, calling it an invasion, talking about women with duct tape over their mouths and so on, and yet there's a lot of reporting out there, there's a lot of crime data out there, there's a lot of Department of Homeland Security data out there that shows border crossings at a near record low. That shows undocumented immigrants committing crime at lower levels. That shows undocumented criminals or undocumented immigrants committing crime at lower levels than native-born Americans. What do you say to
you don't really believe that stat? Do you really believe that?
What do you? Well,
take a look at our federal prisons.
I believe in facts and statistics and data.
Any more quick? Let's go.
Let me just ask you this: what do you say to your critics who say that you are creating a national emergency, that you're concocting a national emergency here in order to get your wall because you couldn't get it through other ways?
What do you think? Do you think I'm creating something? Ask these incredible women who lost their daughters and their sons. Okay? Because your question is a very political question, because you have an agenda. You're CNN. You're fake news. You have an agenda. The numbers that you gave are wrong. Take a look at our federal prison population. See how many of them, percentage-wise, are illegal aliens. Just see. Go ahead and see. It's a fake question. Yes, go ahead.
Most recently, just a few hours ago. It's tiresome, yeah, but it's still damaging, casting fellow Americans as enemies. Well, it is also a phrase CNN's White House correspondent Jim Acosta is now reclaiming. He's out this Tuesday with a new book titled The Enemy of the People, A Dangerous Time to Tell the Truth in America. The book is out on Tuesday, and Jim Acosta is here now for his first live interview all about it. Jim Acosta, chief White House correspondent for CNN. Why write a book about your experience?
Well, I wanted to send a message, to folks who really care about what we do, and the message is basically this. I did not want my children to grow up in a country where the press is called the enemy of the people. Brian, you and I have grown up in a country for the last several decades here where Republicans and Democrats wanted to be in power in Washington, but they didn't demonize us to this extent. And I think I think it started off as an act based on my reporting that the president threw out fake news and the enemy at the people at the beginning just to sort of taunt and troll us. And that has essentially gotten out of control. And now it's gotten to the point where his supporters, some of his supporters, many of them are wonderful people, but some of his supporters feel it's okay to lash out at us in ways that I think put us at danger. And I think we have to hit the pause button and think deeply about whether or not this is the kind of country we want to hand off to our kids.
Some of your critics say if this really was a dangerous time to tell the truth in America, you wouldn't be able to write a book about it.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
Well, I don't want it to become a more dangerous time. And as you and I both know, Brian, we had a pipe bomb delivered to CNN's headquarters last fall. And as I lay out in this book, I've received a number of death threats. I'm not the only one. A number of news anchors and reporters who cover this president on a daily basis receive death threats. We don't know how serious they are. It could just be people venting out there, venting their frustrations, and I get that. We all get mad about what we see on the news on a daily basis. But
some are
question,
serious. There
the
have been
question
arrests
is
in
right.
some cases,
That's right.
yeah.
And the question is whether or not somebody crosses that line and does something that hurts somebody or perhaps kills a journalist. And as I write in the book, Brian, I think at that point we cross over into a different era for the United States, where we join a list of other countries around the world where the press is not safe to do their jobs, and we just can't do that. We cannot take that step because I think it's a far slipperier slope than we possibly can imagine at this point. You saw that moment during the press conference there when the president pointed to some of these ladies here so they could say, yes, the crimes that happened to our family members, that those are real crimes. And, we were just having a conversation just now. And, Kate, I was just telling them that in terms of all of us here at CNN, our hearts go out to them. There is no attempt whatsoever to diminish what they've gone through or take away what they've gone through.
Exactly.
But as you heard in that question that I had with the president there, it was really about the facts and the data and this disconnect that we have when we hear the president talk about immigration. He tends to talk about it in ways that demonize immigrants and that just don't stick to the facts. And so just wanted to point that out, Kate, that some of these folks came up to me right after this press conference was over, some of these very nice ladies here, and they're holding up these pictures of these loved ones who lost their lives. Ma'am, you were just telling me a few moments ago this happened to you as well.
Yes, I'm a legal immigrant. My family came to the right channels, and this is my only son, Ronald da Silva, who was murdered by a previously deported illegal alien. We need to secure our borders to protect American citizens. President Trump is completely correct on this issue. We need to protect this country.
Okay, and thank you very much for sharing your story, ma'am. I appreciate it. Thank you for that card. Thank you.
Has he seen Jim Acosta lately? Acosta is CNN's senior White House correspondent. That's a title that suggests journalism rather than uninformed commentary. And yet here's Acosta from just 2 days ago unloading what is clearly a pre-rehearsed little editorial on CNN's air. Watch.
I think President Trump, Brooke, now has the world record for injecting politics into the aftermath of a terror attack. That is exactly what has happened in the last 12 hours or so as the president has been tweeting about this.
This president won a world record for injecting politics? According to Jim Acosta, reporter, that's, quote, exactly what happened. Can we get some documentation for that claim? A certificate from the Guinness Book, maybe? Did CNN's most visible hard journalist just accidentally slip into third-rate punditry? Looks that way, and it probably wasn't by accident, actually. As a veteran Acosta watcher, we've noticed a theme here. Here's a greatest hits reel.
I think we saw the president's true colors today, and I'm not sure they were red, white, and blue. He is ushering in a Cold War, a return to the Cold War between Washington and Havana. You were not just seeing a press conference go off the rails or jump the tracks. You were watching a presidency go off the rails and jump the tracks. At times, this White House has an unhealthy fixation on what I call the 3 M's, the Mexicans, the Muslims, and the media.
You count the cliches in all those statements. There's a lot more of that, but you get the point. Keep in mind that as of this morning, Jim Acosta was still listed as CNN's senior White House correspondent. Now, that's a different job from being a talking head on one of those panel shows with 19 guests, all of them minor political consultants. At least it's supposed to be a different job. Is Jeff Zucker watching any of this?
Jim?
Thank you very much. And just for the record, we don't hate you. I don't hate you.
Okay.
So pass that along. But
Ask Jeff Zucker how he got his job.
well, if I may follow up on some of the questions that have taken place so far here, sir, and I don't know which microphone to hold here. I've got 3 microphones.
Do have other people, and your ratings aren't as good as some of the other people that are waiting.
They're pretty good right now, actually, Mr. President. But
Go ahead, Jeff.
if I may ask, sir, you said earlier that that WikiLeaks was revealing information about the Hillary Clinton campaign during the election cycle. You welcomed that. At one campaign rally, you said you loved WikiLeaks. At another campaign press conference, you called on the Russians to find the missing 30,000 emails. I'm wondering, sir, if you...
Well, she was actually missing 33, and then that got extended with a whole
maybe
pile
my
after
numbers
that.
are off a little bit, too.
No, but I did say 30, but it was actually higher than that.
If I may ask you, sir, it sounds as though you do not have much credibility here when it comes to leaking, if that is something that you encouraged during the campaign.
Ready?
If I may ask you that.
No, but let me do one at a time.
If I may ask
Do you
a
mind?
follow-up. Yes, sir.
All right. So, in one case, you're talking about highly classified information. In the other case, you're talking about John Podesta saying bad things about the boss. I will say this. If John Podesta said that about me and he was working for me, I would have fired him so fast your head would have spun. He said terrible things about her. But it wasn't classified information. But in one case, you're talking about classified. Regardless, if you look at the RNC, we had a very strong, at my suggestion, and I give Reince great credit for this, at my suggestion, because I know something about this world, I said, I want a very strong defensive mechanism. I don't want to be hacked. And we did that. And you have seen that they tried to hack us and they failed. The DNC did not do that. And if they did it, they could not have been hacked. But they were hacked and terrible things came in. And, you know, the only thing that I do think is unfair is some of the things were so, they were, when I heard some of those things, I picked up the papers the next morning. I said, oh, this is going to be front page. Wasn't even in the papers. Again, if I had that happen to me, it would be the biggest story in the history of publishing or the head of newspapers. I would have been the headline in every newspaper. I mean, think of it. They gave her the questions to a debate, and she should have reported herself. Why didn't Hillary Clinton announce that, I'm sorry, but I have been given the questions to a debate or a town hall, and I feel that it's inappropriate, and I want to turn in CNN for not doing a good job.
And if I may follow up on that, just something that Jonathan Karl was asking you about. You said that the leaks are real, but the news is fake. I guess I don't understand. It seems that there's a disconnect there. If the information coming from those leaks is real, then how can the stories be fake?
The reporting is fake.
And if I may ask, I just want to ask
Jim, you know what it is? Here's the thing. The public isn't, you know, they read newspapers, they see television, they watch. They don't know if it's true or false because they're not involved. I'm involved. I've been involved with this stuff all my life, but I'm involved. So I know when you're telling the truth or when you're not. I just see many, many untruthful things. And I'll tell you what else I see. I see tone. You know the word tone. The tone is such hatred. I'm really not a bad person, by the way. No, but the tone is such, I do get good ratings, you have to admit that. The tone is such hatred. I watched this morning a couple of the network, and I have to say, Fox and Friends in the morning, they're very honorable people. They're very, not because they're good, because they hit me also when I do something wrong, but they have the most honest morning show. That's all I can say. It's the most honest. But the tone, Jim, if you look, the hatred, I mean, sometimes somebody gets, well, you look at your show that goes on at 10 o'clock in the evening. You just take a look at that show. That is a constant hit. The panel is almost always exclusive anti-Trump. The good news is he doesn't have good ratings. But the panel is almost exclusive anti-Trump. And the hatred and venom coming from his mouth, the hatred coming from other people on your network. Now, I will say this. I watch it. I see it. I'm amazed by it. And I just think you'd be a lot better off. I honestly do. The public gets it, you know. Look, when I go to rallies, they turn around, they start screaming at CNN. They want to throw their placards at CNN. You know, I think you would do much better by being different. But you just take a look. Take a look at some of your shows in the morning and the evening. if a guest comes out and says something positive about me, it's brutal. Now, they'll take this news conference. I'm actually having a very good time, okay? But they'll take this news conference. Don't forget, that's the way I won. Remember, I used to give you a news conference every time I made a speech, which was like every day. Okay? No, that's how I won. I won with news conference and probably speeches. I certainly didn't win by people listening to you people, that's for sure.
You say that you wanted more people to come in from
Norway.
Is that true, Mr.
Thank you
President? Mr. President, what about the DACA kids? Should they worry about what's going to happen to them, sir? Mr. President, how's it going so far, sir? Mr. Kim, will you give up your nuclear weapons, sir?
When you yell questions, Jim, Fox News and others attack you. We can show some of the examples for having an outburst, for asking harsh questions, for grandstanding. These are some of the headlines from FoxNews.com.
Right.
Why do you think there's so much resentment or criticism of the way you do this?
Well, to some extent, you know, the president, Fox News, they don't have Barack Obama around anymore. They don't have Hillary Clinton, although the president goes after Hillary Clinton a lot, so does Fox News. And so we've sort of replaced Obama and Hillary. They need somebody to attack, and I think that we've sort of filled that role. Part of the issue is I think, you know, instead of wanting to focus on the president's behavior, they'd rather focus on our reporting on the president's behavior. For example, yesterday, you know, he tweeted out a bunch of false things, that he had watched MS-13 liberate towns in this country. That never happened.
That ICE had liberated towns from MS-13?
Yeah, or ICE had liberated towns from MS-13, right?
And
then there was another one where he said, I didn't recommend that Republicans, you know, go after and adopt new immigration legislation. That obviously, you know, that is in direct contradiction with something that he tweeted earlier in the week. And so, you know, we spend a lot of our time spinning our wheels, calling out his falsehoods. That consumes a lot of the coverage, and it presents, I think, to the American people this sense that all we're doing all day long is bashing the president, when in fact we have to be fact checkers, and so we spend a lot of time simply just fact checking the president.
And fact checking sounds like bashing
Right.
to a part of the population.
That's right. And I think, you know, listen, there are folks on the conservative side of the spectrum in the media, you know, I refer to them affectionately as the MAGA-phone. They, by and large, just echo what the president wants to hear and what he wants to say. We see that a lot happening over on Fox News. I told people at that rally on Monday night in Columbia, listen, we're not going to just do the news for the Republicans. We have to do the news for everybody. And you may not like what you hear all the time. You know, and the question I asked to a lot of people at that rally was, are you forming your conclusions on what we do based on watching CNN or watching other networks, you know, our rivals and so on, and their coverage of what we do?
That's a great point.
And
yeah.
by and large, what I find is that people are developing their impressions of us by watching Hannity and so on. And I said, hey, you know, give us a chance, watch us, and then make up your mind.
Right. The pro-Trump media calls you fake news. They say you're a drama queen. I wrote down some of these slurs. Some of them I can't read because they're curse words.
Yeah.
Point is, though, when you're in the back of the room, like you were on Friday, and you shout a question to Trump, and he probably can't even hear it, isn't it true that you're kind of doing that just to get attention?
Well,
isn't that part of what you're doing?
On Friday, when I was shouting that question, I thought, first of all, he keeps calling us the enemy of the people. You know, somebody ought to ask him after what happened in Annapolis, are you going to continue to call us the enemy of the people? And so they had an event. They put him on all the other side of the room. But there was a moment towards the end of that event when he was walking towards us, and I thought, well, here's a chance to perhaps shout a question to him. And we have seen on occasion when we shout questions, he does answer the question. So it's not unreasonable to ask that question. It's not like we barge into the Oval Office or barge into the Easter egg roll and start shouting questions.
But there's a perception you do in order to get attention for yourself.
Typically, and what people don't understand is that typically at the very end of these pool opportunities, what we call pool opportunities, where we go in and talk to the president or he has an event, we wait until the very end of the bill signing or the event or whatever he has, and he says, okay, thanks, guys, and then we'll go in and we'll ask our questions. Be a computer programmer. Aren't you trying to change what it means to be an immigrant coming into this country? If you're telling them you have to speak English, can't people learn how to speak English when they get here?
Well, first of all, right now, it's a requirement that to be naturalized, you have to speak English. So the notion that speaking English wouldn't be a part of our immigration systems would be actually very ahistorical. Secondly, I don't want to get off into a whole thing about history here, but the Statue of Liberty is a symbol of liberty enlightening the world. It's a symbol of American liberty lighting the world. The poem that you're referring to that was added later is not actually part of the original Statue of Liberty. But more fundamentally, the history, but more fundamentally,
You're saying
the
that
history.
that does not represent.
I'm saying that
what the country
the
has always
notion.
thought of
I'm saying the
as
notion that the.
immigration coming into this
I'm saying the
country.
notion.
Stephen, I'm sorry.
No,
that sounds like,
Jim, let me ask you a question.
That sounds like some national park revisionism.
No,
The
what I'm
Statue-
asking you
the
is-
Statue of Liberty
Jim,
has always
Jim,
been
let me ask you a
beacon
question.
of hope to the world
Jim,
for people to send
Jim, do you
their
believe-
people to this country,
Jim,
and they're not always going to speak
Jim,
English, Stephen.
Jim,
they're not
do you
always
believe-
going to be highly skilled. They're not always
Jim,
going to be
Jim,
so many
Jim,
people
I
are
appreciate your
sitting down
speech.
there.
Jim, I appreciate your speech. So let's talk about this.
It was a modest
Jim, let's talk about this. In 1970, when we let in 300,000 people a year, was that violating or not violating the Statue of Liberty law of the land? In the 1990s, when it was 500,000 a year, was it violating or not violating the Statue of Liberty law of the land?
Was it violating?
When it was 700,000 a year. No, tell me what years. Tell me what years. Tell me what years meet. Tell me what years meet Jim Acosta's definition of the Statue of Liberty poem law of the land. So you're saying 1 million a year is the Statue of Liberty number. 900,000 violates it. 800,000 violates it.
You're sort of bringing a
Jim.
press one for English philosophy here to
Jim.
immigration, and that's never
For-
been
Jim.
what the United States has been about, Stephen.
That but you're also your statement's also shockingly ahistorical in another respect too, which is if you look at the history of immigration, it's actually ebbed and flowed. We've had periods of very large waves, followed by periods of less immigration and more immigration, and during the we've had
period of immigration right now. The
Yeah,
president wants to build
it's
a wall.
actually-
You want
it's
to
actually-
bring about a sweeping change to the
surely,
immigration
Jim, you
system.
don't actually think that a wall affects green card policy. You couldn't possibly believe that, do you? Actually, the notion that you actually think immigration is at a historic law, the foreign-born population in the United States today,
With the
Jim,
new chief of
Jim,
staff on Monday talking about how border crossings.
do you
were
really,
way
I
out.
want to be serious, Jim, do you really at CNN not know the difference between green card policy and illegal immigration?
Sir,
Are you
my
really
father
don't know
was a
that?
Cuban immigrant. He came to this country in 1962, right before the Cuban Missile Crisis, and obtained a green card. Yes, people who immigrate
Okay,
to this
so
country
Jim-
can eventually. People who
So, Jim, it's
immigrate
a
to this
factual
country
question,
through,
Jim.
not through Ellis
Jim, as a
Island, your
factual-
family
Jim,
may
as a
have,
factual
but in other
question-
ways, do obtain a green card at some point. They do it through a lot of hard work. And yes, they may learn English as a second language later on in life.
So, but
this
Jim-
whole notion of, well, they could learn, they have to learn English before they get to the United States. Are we just going to bring in people from Great Britain and Australia?
Jim, actually, I have to honestly say, I am shocked at your statement that you think that only people from Great Britain and Australia would know English. It reveals your cosmopolitan bias to a shocking degree that in your mind, no, this is an amazing moment. This is an amazing moment that you think only people from Great Britain or Australia would speak English is so insulting to millions of hardworking immigrants who do speak English from all over the world. Jim, have you honestly never met an immigrant from another country who speaks English outside of Great Britain and Australia? Is that your personal experience?
Of course, there are people who come.
But that's not what you
from other
said,
parts of the
and
world.
it shows your cosmopolitan bias. And I just want to
It
say,
sounds like you're trying to engineer the
I just wanna
racial
say-
and ethnic flow of people into this country.
Jim, that is one of the most outrageous, insulting, ignorant, and foolish things you've ever said. And for you, that's still a really the notion that you think that this is a racist bill is so wrong and so insulting.
When you were asked about the case of Jamal Khashoggi, you did not respond to that question in front of the
I don't
Saudi
know that
conference.
anybody
Were you
asked me.
afraid of, were you afraid of offending him on that subject?
No, not at all. I don't really care about offending people. I sort of thought you'd know that.